Hi, Mike Gridley, and welcome to PowerBoat Television. In the past, we've had the privilege of covering the Classic and Antique Boat Show in Gravenhurst and had a wonderful look at some beautiful restored and reproduction classic boats. This year on the show, we're going to do something a little bit different, and we're going to take a look behind the scenes to see how the boats arrive at the show in such pristine conditions. Now, behind us here is Duke's Boats. It's the last building standing of all of the old builders like Gridley and others here in Muskoka. But there's a host of other builders throughout Muskoka that are doing wonderful work with restorations and, of course, reproduction builds. So we're going to tour some of the shops and follow some projects from beginning to in the water when they're completed. Every year, a host of shops open their doors for the Antique and Classic Boat Society Spring Tour to showcase the projects they are working on. And the projects cover restorations to every year, type, and size of antique and classic boat, as well as engines. I personally had time to stop in at Windsor Boat Works, Brackley Boats, Stan Hunter Boat Builder, Tom Adams Boat Builder, Curtis Hilbin's shop, Clark Wooden Boats, and Tim Butson Wooden Boat Builder. While at Clark Wooden Boats, two boats caught my eye for projects to follow over the next few months. This hydroplane, just undergoing a major restoration, and this ditch burn showing some extensive hull and other work. To balance these restorations with a new reproduction build, a significant area for several shops, Tim Butson agreed to have us follow one of his projects. On my first visit back to Muskoka, Gary talked about two boats we would focus on.
This is a boat that's been around Muskoka its whole life. It was built in Bracebridge by Manette Shields. It sat in a local marina for years, and lots of people knew about it, but they never wanted to sell it. Their idea was always to restore it.
The other boat we wanted to have a look at, that's going in the water again this summer after it's completed, or is
yes,
it
is.
So tell me about that one.
This boat's a 1931 ditch burn, so built here in Gravenhurst. This is its second owner. It's the first time that this boat has been out of the boathouse that it went to when it was built.
Wow, now that's long history. How in-depth is the work here?
Being pointed at both ends way this boat is, it had been squared out at the back to give it more stability. The current owner wants to go back to something that's more original. So we've had to come up with the hull shape and design to put that back to original.
That's a lot of work. Our next stop was to check in at Tim Butson's shop to see his new build that was underway.
We're a traditional builder, so all our construction is very traditionally. We don't do any plywoods or epoxies. Everything is solid mahoganies, double plank bottoms like they used to do, and copper rivets. The boats are traditionally designed the way my dad was taught from his dad, with using half models and scaling everything up to full-size drawings and then creating the actual boat from the drawings.
Later in the show, we'll check back in on the progress of these boats. Well, it's been a few weeks since we've been to Gary Clark Wooden Boats to check on the progress of the ditch burn and the Ventnor design hydroplane, so let's go in the shop and have a look. The progress made on Lake Long, which means eagle, was impressive. The Spanish cedar planks in the hull literally glowed under the coats of varnish. The research, attention to detail, and skill involved in replicating the original hull design using traditional materials was impressive. With hull work complete and all of the chrome refinished and installed, the crew spent the next several weeks installing the engine, electrical, and other systems. By late summer, she'd been in the water for trial runs a few times to ensure she was perfect. From May through October, work on the Minette Shields-built Ventnor hydroplane progressed steadily. Witnessing the progress, one begins to appreciate the time, knowledge, and talent required to restore these antiques and classics. Each frame and plank takes hours to fabricate, shape, and install. After countless hours of fabrication, many more go into sanding and finishing. In order to get the boat into the water this season, a bulletproof Mercruiser 5.7-liter V8 was installed, while the original gray marine racing engine was sent off to Tennessee for a complete rebuild. Each trip to Muskoka also saw us dropping in at Tim Butson's in Bracebridge to follow the progress on the Gentleman's Racer. Tim and his team are truly traditional builders, and the time it takes to handcraft a boat like this is literally thousands of hours. While many shops employ power planers and sanders, at Butson's, the hulls are hand-planed, a slow, painstaking process. Over several months, they would drive in thousands of screws and make and glue in the equivalent number of plugs. Each phase of the boat's construction was inspected and approved by the owner, including seat design and positioning, and windshield height and more, making this a truly custom boat, but also causing some delays in the progress of the build. Unfortunately, the boat was just being stained and varnished as the snow came to Muskoka, so she won't have her sea trials until the spring. It's really been interesting following the progress of this wonderful Ventnor design built by Minette Shields. First saw it in March during the spring tour, and we've been following the course of its construction over the summer. When we come back later on in the show, we're going to see this running on the waters of Lake Muskoka. Well, it's certainly been worth the wait. We first saw this Ventnor design built by Minette Shields here in Muskoka back in Gary's shop in March on the spring tour, and we followed it through with the rebuild. It's a gorgeous restoration of this late 1930s hydroplane racer. It's going to be a gorgeous sight that you're going to see for years to come here on the Muskoka Lakes. And gorgeous she is. While the owner had elected to finish the boat in natural wood with minimal chrome, unlike most race boats, this hydroplane will still turn heads. With the modern Mercruiser, the Ventnor had plenty of power and accelerated smartly. But being the second outing on the lake and a customer's boat, Gary was not out to push it to test its limits. It was just an honor to be on the water in the classic hydroplane with the unknown past. With the press of the starter button, the calm of the fall morning was broken. Giving the engine time to warm up in the 9 degrees Celsius heat wave, Gary idled out and around Gravenhurst Bay as we chatted about the Ditchburn.
Over time, people change things when it's easier, and this boat was repowered from a 6-cylinder engine to a V8 engine, and the hull was modified to support that extra power, and we put it back to its original configuration, and even though it has more power, it still seems to perform well.
With plenty of power, we are up and running in no time. With its original 6-cylinder scripts, top speed was in the high 30s, but with a modern Mercury V8, L'Aiglon now tops 50 miles per hour. In smooth waters, the ride is soft, slightly bow high, and an exhilarating experience. Given the months spent following the restoration of these craft, our time with them on the water was all too short. Well, it's great to finally see this ditch burn back out on the water. It's been a long project. Gary and his crew at Clark Wooden Boats started the project last fall, and we've been with it since March. But here we are, it's October, on the waters in Muskoka, enjoying a beautifully restored boat. But the cycle starts again. This winter, more boats will go into the restoration shops around Muskoka to come back out in the spring looking like this.